what about the medications I'm on? How could those impact? Could that impact the sleep apnea? Could that cause sleep apnea? Could it make sleep apnea worse? What about when they had me on tons of medications? Could that have made the apnea worse? Like I was so I had like a fraction of the knowledge that I have now. When I was at that appointment, I didn't know anything. So I'm asking him all these relevant, legitimate questions. He refused to he looked at me like this. And he's sitting really close because we're looking at this at the screen together. I'm sitting really close to him and he's refusing to answer. And I'm in a state of crisis. And I should not have been sent home like that. And what he did following was they sent me home with CPAP and I remained in crisis. I was in a state of terror. I was in respiratory crisis. And like at times during the day, my oxygen was dropping to 70. And I went home with that CPAP, like just out of it, propped myself in the corner in the dark with the CPAP machine, and I was stopping breathing awake with this machine on. I was stopping breathing. And the CPAP was intolerable. I had to tolerate it. This thing was, it was literal terror and torture, and it was turned too high for the amount of respiratory drive that I had. My respiratory drive was so low. And here's the thing that I didn't understand. I understood it, but I didn't understand it. And I don't know how. No, this took me a long time to figure out. And here's the thing. When you're uneducated and stuff, someone like this doesn't think you're going to figure things out. And I think there are doctors who are surprised that I'm still here, that I've lived this long and fought this hard. And so I proved that I was right. And, I felt like I had won somehow. Even though I was in crisis, I felt like I had won. And then my doctor got the results. I never saw the results. And my doctor wasn't responding appropriately. My family doctor wasn't responding appropriately to the results because the results were bad. And my doctor wasn't fighting for me. I remained in crisis and I still needed help. And I couldn't understand why my family doctor wasn't fighting for me. And my family doctor eventually refused me care. And I couldn't understand why. Well, I found out much later, long after he wasn't my family doctor, I saw the report, the misleading report that the other doctor had sent him. Misrecording how ill I was, misrecording the data from that sleep study, deliberately trying to downgrade it and trying to make it look that I'm not sick, this is just normal. This is just someone with moderate apnea. No, I didn't have moderate apnea by American standards or Canadian standards. So he was allowed to write these misleading reports. And even when I saw that report, I was still in medical crisis. and still really out of it, and desperately needing an advocate. And he was allowed to mislead everybody. He's written, and see, as I traveled through the system, fighting for help, fighting to get a trach, fighting, trying to see other specialists to get help, they were looking at this false report. And so then I'd go in. I mean, the guy who wrote the report, the misleading report, is a well-respected doctor. So I would go into specialist's office, and this remains still to be true today. The way they think about me. I was going into specialist's office, and I would say to them, I was like really out of it, still in a state of severe trauma. I'm still in a state of trauma, obviously, right? But I was way worse. And I was going into these offices and saying that he's misleading. He's lying about how sick I am and blah, blah. Well, who do you think these doctors are going to believe? This well-respected doctor, or someone who's in crisis and saying this doctor's lying about me? So they were turning me away. And here's the thing, though, like, I was unable to fight for myself, and they offer you no advocacy. There's no one to help. This is inconceivable to me, that the healthcare system and the college. The alarm's going off again. I've got to change these alarms. The college offers you no advocacy. The college refuses to offer somebody extremely vulnerable advocacy. And like, that's unbelievable, that you can be mentally out of your mind. You can be in absolute physical crisis and not be able to fight for yourself. And nobody in the system will offer you advocacy. That to me is inconceivable, because the chances of your survival is so much lower. But you know what? And I did make a complaint. I wrote a formal complaint. I was completely out of it. I needed someone to help me with that whole complaint process. And they sided with the doctor, which I wasn't able to properly represent myself, or, properly fight for myself. And then, I had to continue to fight for help in my community with specialists. I continued to try to fight to get a trach or other medical care, and, legitimate medical care. And I'm still trying to get help, right? Help to move my jaw forward, and Chiari surgery, if that's what's needed. And you know what? Doctors are referring back to these misleading reports. And I should have had, my spouse has passed away. I should have had my family fighting for me. The college and the health authority should provide someone to fight for your health, fight for your life, fight for your rights. But you don't have any rights. So now I'm at the point, this is really bad and really unfair that these misleading reports exist in my medical records, right? So now I'm at the point where I want this addressed. I want these records amended. I want these records fixed, because the data doesn't lie. And when I asked him for copies of that sleep study, he refused to, for a year, he refused to give me a copy. And then someone finally told me in the system, told me how to write him a letter to force him to give me a copy of the data. And, when I got the data, I was still really out of it. I didn't know how to interpret the data, and it took me a long time to understand what he really did and how bad, how sick I really am in that data. And the data doesn't lie. So now I want those reports amended. I want him to change those reports without any manipulation, without saying, yeah, but she's had follow-up, I don't want to see any manipulation. And I'm too sick to follow through with that process. I need help with that process because I'm still severely sleep deprived, Because those misleading reports that he's written are still misleading people today. When he started misleading people right from the get-go, I said to the college, I'm scared because of his actions that everybody in his field is going to refuse me care. And that's exactly what happened. They said, no, he can't do that. That's exactly what transpired. They all refused me care for over 2 years. They refused to let me back in. No one would take my referrals based on his misleading reports. And I was literally tortured. My lack of drive to breathe was horrific. I was breathing 3 to 4 times a minute. The critical insomnia, wearing that CPAP for 10 or 12 hours at night and sleeping only 1 or 2 hours a night and wearing that machine. It was turned too high for my drive to breathe. Took me years to understand that machine was actually not just stopping the apnea, but it was making me breathe. But none of this was done right. Like I really wished I would have had a trach. I should have had a trach. But this needs to be fixed. This needs to be cleaned up. I need to get strong enough. I need someone to help me address this. And those reports need to be amended and fixed without any manipulation or twisting things and say, yeah, but this, but that. No, the data, those reports are completely manipulative and misleading all the doctors in my community who read that report. He misreported all the data. And he was allowed to do it because I was so sick and vulnerable. And they offer no protection from a doctor who's angry because you said you've been misdiagnosed, and you have been. It's sad, and they should not be allowed to get away with this. It's sad. It breaks my heart when I think of what they did to me, and he was allowed to do this. Allowed to mislead everybody.